And welcome to Trustee Talk. I'm Dick Murgatroyd. Thank you for joining us. Our guest today is the new president of the Anderson Township Trustees, but I don't want to say he's an old friend, but a longtime friend.
Older president.
An older president, too. Right. Russ Jackson. Russ, it's good to see you.
Always like to talk about
and it seems like it's been forever since we've been together.
We have.
On this show.
Something happened in between.
There was an election.
I'm still here. And
I'm still here.
That's all that matters.
There was an election somewhere along the line.
There was an election in between, of which I wasn't involved.
And you weren't involved.
But
anyway, it's good to have you back. And we got a lot to catch up on.
I am once again president of the Board of Trustees. I was looking earlier today. I have been 12 out of the last 20 years. I've been president.
Is that right?
So I have no idea why.
Well, because
everybody else stepped back and I was there.
Nobody wanted it.
Nobody else wanted it. That's right.
Well, listen. You have been. They rotate. Do they rotate that role?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So we try to.
It's kind of who gets the short straw.
Depends on who wants it. Last 2 years, Peggy had specifically asked if she could do it. She probably knew she was retiring and wanted to do it because up to that time she hadn't wanted to do it. So anyway.
Well, good. Well, welcome back. Then you're not the new president, but you're the returning president.
And I'm I am older than the other two.
You are.
Trustees, for sure. Yes. I think I'm older combined than the other two trustees. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's a good thing.
Actually,
you got two new guys that have come on board.
Dick, it's a breath of fresh air. I particularly admire these two young men because prior to the election and since the election, they have worked very hard to learn about township form of government, about Anderson Township and what it is we do and why we do it, so they can make really sensible decisions. And I really admire them for that.
Which is great. That is good. We had them on shortly after the election, I guess it was, and I was very impressed with both of them. And it seemed like they were dedicated and really intensely interested in the process. And because it is an interesting form of government,
it's a nice term.
Well,
interesting.
Because
unique form of government.
It is a unique form of government because then a lot of people, I think, always kind of scratch their heads when you say township. What does that mean? For two guys like that, I guess now they lived here and
both live here a long time.
Have worked here, been there,
right?
But still, probably don't really know a lot about the structure.
That topic just I always get fired up about it. I am always disappointed that with a community of 45,000 people, we don't have more people that know a little bit more about the form of government that we have. They don't teach it in the Forest Hill school system, and I've tried to encourage them to spend an hour each school term to just let these kids understand that we're not a city, we don't have a council, but we do have a great form of government.
Yes, you do.
And it's we keep working on it. We'll get more and more people involved.
I know there are other townships, other parts of the country. It seems that Ohio, especially here, I know in Kentucky they don't have townships.
Right.
Indiana, I don't know.
Yes, they do. Because it was part of the Northwest Ordinance.
Yeah, right.
The townships
were created. So that's really where it came from.
Well, it actually started in the Northeast.
Okay.
When the Mayflower got here, they had no form of government, and they didn't have any people, they didn't have anything. So they said, well, we'll just divide up into what they called townships, and that's where it was created. And if you go to New York State, they still have townships, function totally different than ours, but they do have townships. The township form of government dates back to about 900 AD.
Wow.
And then it went to England with the Norman invasion and the concept ended up on the Mayflower. And then when they developed the same idea was when Northwest Ordinance was created. They had Ohio, Indiana, Michigan. How do we divided up. And they went to this township format. Ohio is different in that we still have over 1,300 townships.
Wow.
But of those 1,300, well over 1,200 of them are rural. They have less than the average population of 1,500 people.
What designate, I mean, how do they determine a township versus a municipality?
Well, the townships are there. Then if you wish to incorporate, and what happens is villages would incorporate and then they would grow and become cities. You could, Anderson Township could incorporate and become a city. We'd be, I think, 15th largest city in the state if we did that. We happen to like this form of government. The uniqueness is we and the few urban townships, the big townships, have been able to hold on to this form of government, even though we've vastly grown and gotten bigger than every village. And so we have, most of the townships have a whole different set of conditions and problems, but they have the same form of government. That's three elected officials and a fiscal officer. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah, and there's no criteria as far as as far as size is concerned. So you can be very small, as you said,
as long as you can maintain it.
Rural townships,
right,
or large like Anderson Township is.
What happens, Dick, is people move into town. I see it all the time. People come, well, why don't you become a city? Well, what would we gain by becoming a city? Be able to have a payroll tax. Now with some of these programs that they have in the state, these JEDs and JEDZs, zones, you can create payroll tax if you want to. It's just something that we've had no particular desire to do, is to have any more taxes than we already have. We'd like to have less. But we could become, if we wanted, we just don't want to. It's the simplest, closest to the people form of government. And that's what these two new trustees are learning, how people pick up the phone and they call them. Mm-hmm. Or they email about a problem. And then we can react to the problem. We don't have all this bureaucracy in between.
Which is not all bad.
Not all bad at all. Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you, as a group, do you create policy for the township?
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't make laws. We don't have a legislature. We cannot make laws. The difference in the state of Ohio is that townships can only do what is specifically proscribed by the state legislature and the Ohio Revised Code. Municipalities, on the other hand, can do anything that's not prohibited by the Ohio Revised Code. Basically, the difference.
Yeah.
And that's good. Not a big deal. What we have are some conditions as an urban township that need to be modified, and that's what we're really working on. The governor was here in town earlier this week and had a chance to, some of our people had a chance to talk to him a little bit. It was clear he didn't really grasp what urban townships were. Most of them are right here in Hamilton County and southwestern Ohio. That we have different conditions, and we need to be put on a level playing field with cities and villages. I'll give you an example, is the gasoline tax. In Ohio, cities and villages split up 40% of the gasoline tax based on how many cars, not bad, principal, are registered. All the rest of the money is split evenly between all these townships, these little guys with 1,500 people, and Anderson Township. It's kind of a
so it has no bearing on how big you are.
Nothing to do really with how many automobiles. So that's the kind of thing that needs to be modified. We need to take this urban township designation and make it it's a legal entity, but we have to make it a distinctive legal entity. To put us on the level playing field. Big issue going on right now is annexation, where townships don't have much of a voice if somebody else wants to grab off part of land in our community, particularly if it's parkland, because parks government has no vote in the issue. That kind of thing shouldn't be for
Right.
big townships.
Yeah.
Most of the bigger cities were created by annexing townships, but they did it because they were able to provide something. They were providing roads, water, sewers, something of value. Well, in Hamilton County, because we have a regional form of sewers, for example, and for water, it's not an enticement. That wouldn't lure anybody to want to be annexed by the city of Cincinnati. So it's an interesting. We really have a dichotomy within the township form of government, but it is so simple because, as I said, it's the closest to the government. We don't have any bureaucracy. I was looking at some numbers the other day that were talking on some survey that was done that the average per capita expense for townships in Ohio was $500, and the average for municipalities was like $26,000.
Oh my goodness sakes! Wow, that's huge.
Is that a big difference?
Now, why is the difference? Is just because you don't have all of that.
We don't have the bureaucracy.
That you're paying
Right,
for.
that's the biggest difference. Yeah. And they do a lot of things. Cities tend to do a lot of things that they get involved in things that maybe they shouldn't get involved in. You know, if you can keep it basic, and that's what our two new trustees are firm believers, and I have always been a believer that you want to make it simple, and you want to focus on those things for which a government really was created: safety, fire, and police, roads, some zoning, and maintaining property values. That's essentially it. Cities get involved, for example, in trash removal.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Leave it up to the private sector, right?
Why not? Yeah, it does pretty well out here. Let them compete. If they want to get better, that's fine. But why would we as a government want to get involved in something like that? And I think that's a classic example of going.
It's a good example, and you're right. I think that, sometimes cities tend to want to take more on, I guess, and then as they take more on, they build more bureaucracy, and pretty soon you're paying for more of that and less of service.
Absolutely. But part of the reason they do it is because they get a lot of money from payroll tax.
Yes.
So they have all this money. You look at the city of Cincinnati, their property taxes rate slightly higher than ours, maybe a couple points. But their property tax revenues are insignificant compared to their payroll tax.
Oh, yes.
Now they have a lot of jobs, they have buildings, they have offices, they have things that create jobs for people, and that's fine. But I think what happens is they get so much money that they think that they are required to spend it.
Yes, I think you're right. Our national government feels that way too.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Even if they don't have it, they want to spend it.
They still want to spend it, that's right.
So now, what is your basis of the funding for the township? Is that?
We are down out that basically, with a couple minor exceptions, our funding comes from property tax. We get a large amount from what's called our TIF program. People don't understand that the TIF program is something that we did almost 20 years ago that allows us to capitalize on monies that would otherwise be split, go to the county mainly, that we can use, but we can only use it for investment in infrastructure. But that's what pays for many of the things that we do. We buy our fire trucks and our police cars and all of those things with those funds, so we don't have to pay them out of the general fund or out of the fire revenues. And that's why we can extend our levies. We've had one tax levy now in 14 years.
That's pretty amazing.
14 years.
Pretty amazing.
And if things go well, I know Ken Dietz will shake in his boots if he hears me say this, but I have no question we can go another 3 years without even talking about a levy. And if things go well, we may get up to a total of 20 years.
My goodness.
Without a tax, in spite of inflation has not been as bad as if inflation was really as terrible as it was, 30 years ago.
Oh,
that would be different. But how do you do it? You spend less than you take in. I know that's probably
that's a hard thing. For
hard one for people to grasp.
Hard thing for government to grasp.
That's right.
They just don't really. I mean, that is, and you serve a huge population here.
45,000 people.
I mean,
yeah.
which and
Right.
with a lot of infrastructure that
We do.
you
Right.
You provide. So I mean, that is pretty great accomplishment.
We we talk about finances, and one of the keys, I believe, is to not mortgage your children and your grandchildren, and that's to avoid any long-term debt. We call long-term debt 7 years. They call it 40 years in the cities.
Right.
But it's just, it does you no good to go out and borrow money. We get along just fine.
Yeah, do you get assistance from the state as far as any funding is concerned, or for any particular, I mean, roads and things of that sort? Does the state?
Essentially, no. You know, the
provide?
one source of monies that we were getting, I fought to not get, and that's the death tax. The inheritance tax, I always felt it was wrong. You tax the tax, and it really hurt small businesses. A lot of people didn't understand what the problem was. Well, if you own a small business and you basically are giving jobs to family members and the owner dies, these poor people have to sell their company.
Yes.
To pay the tax, and that's just absolutely wrong. It doesn't do any of us any
No.
good. So we fought, and we finally got the legislature to change that, and that cost us, I think, on the average, about $1.7 million a year.
Wow.
That we were getting.
Yeah.
But if it was wrong, it was wrong. The couple of other things that have been phased out, the funniest one, and the one that all these township people were talking to the governor about the other day, is this local government fund. Oh my goodness, he cut the local government fund in half. And when a couple of them that the zealots said, well, why did you do that? And he said, how much did it affect your budget? How much did you spend last year? How much did you spend the year before? Maybe affect him 3%.
Yeah.
7% tops. You couldn't cut 7%. The silliness about the local government fund is that they ought to do away with it. Now, when these other trustees around from other townships hear me say that, they think I'm absolutely nuts. Oh, that's awful. Should never have been there in the first place. It was created to cover the cost of unfunded mandates in the state. That was the original reason they did it. But nobody even remembers what those mandates were.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these people started relying on that as money. I say, hey, best thing to do is just do away with it. Don't raise our taxes other places. Just do away with it. We'll survive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And why should we send our money to Columbus, like we do to the federal government?
Yes.
And they send back 60%.
Yeah.
And think we should be happy with it. Let us just keep it. We'll be fine. Anyway, that's my theory.
Does it make now, because you have a lot of businesses in Anderson Township, does that create any funding source for
really
the township?
No, but it's good for property values. Property values enhance. People want to move here, and that's our source of revenue. So just like building this building, people say, well, why would you do that? I thought you wanted smaller government. The idea here was to get people to stay in their community and continue to enhance property values. Because without property values staying stable or going up, we'd have to cut back and do away with services. And I think if you look at those, what they call the second tier of communities outside the city of Cincinnati, the older communities, the St. Bernards and those places, that was their problem. they became stagnant and their property values didn't go up. They didn't have jobs because the businesses all left.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to cut back services. And when you cut back services, then your property values go down because people don't want to move there. We have to take the proactive approach and say, that's why jobs are important. We get no direct revenue from them at all.
It's interesting. I mean, because a lot of communities, over on the Kentucky side of the river, the communities really struggle to create business opportunities for people in their communities because but then they have a payroll tax.
Right.
And that's the difference.
And that's why I mentioned earlier these things they call the JEDs and the JED zones that allow townships to have designated areas where they could collect payroll taxes. So they would say to a company, hey, you come here, we'll spend $5 million, but your employees have to pay payroll tax to get it back. And that works fine if you have such an animal. The newest one, and this one's quite interesting in the state, the fellow who actually passed or got the legislation enacted for JED zones is now trying to do away with it. This is like 12 years later or whatever it is, because it's been abused so many times. And I'll give you an example with Springfield or Sycamore Township. They actually created JED zones because they had the Kenwood Shopping Center as the main one, and the people vote on it to have a payroll tax only in this designated area. The businesses had no choice in it, and they used the claim that it would be, the money was for economic development.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what was it? The economic development is already there. So that's what's got them all upset. So they're trying to actually stop these things, any new ones after the end of this year. It's going to be interesting.
Got to peel back on that.
But, if you want townships to have payroll tax, then just pass a law and let them have payroll tax if they want it. Then our people, citizens, can make a decision. We don't have as yet, and maybe with the Encore development and the riverfront development, it may change, but we really don't have any industrial, commercial area. We don't have those kind of big businesses that really would generate the kind of dollars they're talking about. Mercy Hospital, Forest Hill School District, those are our two big employers, and Riverbend will be third, but so many of theirs are part-time. Riverbend, I meant Belterra, formerly River Downs. So. Anyway.
Because that is, and I guess that would be an incentive for businesses to come here if they don't have the payroll tax.
It should be, and it has been.
I would think it would be a big
A lot of
incentive.
people say maybe not as much as you would want, but on average for those people who, particularly the entrepreneurs who actually pay the tax themselves, the owners, and they live here, absolutely is an incentive.
Absolutely.
For whether big companies care enough about their employees and they don't have any local residents, I'd say it's doubtful that it's an incentive. Because everybody offers them all this money. Everybody's willing, hey, here, take this $40 million and we'll love you to death.
Yeah, they will, because and they look to get that back in
the taxes.
In the taxes.
Right.
And the schools are supported by their own tax system.
Well, and a combination of state funds.
And state funds. So
yes.
you all you don't have to subsidize the schools.
No, we stay totally separate, and that's a good thing. And as you know, like places up east that I know of where the school system is controlled by the regional government or the local government, we don't have that at all. Ours is totally independent. So,
actually, pretty good form of government.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, very simple, and you pay attention to the things you need to pay attention
Well,
to.
I wish more people would learn about it, Dick. That's the key.
It is because it's fascinating, and it's lasted, as you said. It's an old form of government, and to have been successful. I marvel because we talk about this every time we get together, but the great job that Anderson Township does in providing the services that it provides, and in doing so, and still with a minimal tax base, and not a lot of the other little subsidies that come along through different sources, and what a terrific place you've created here and maintained.
Thank you. I'd like to keep it that way if we can.
Well, I can understand why. I've been on the other side of things there, and I'm going to tell you, it gets pretty complicated and pretty frustrating.
Oh, I
at
know
times.
it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I got to think that you guys have you found the magic bullet there.
Yeah, it's working well for us. The interesting thing when you talk about keeping it simple is these committees. The Economic Development Committee, an idea I had about 7, 8 years ago because we never had our own, has really come to fruition. I mean, this group, we reached out and brought together all the major employers and people who had the wherewithal to make things happen, and they're doing very well. All of our committees are important, but how do they serve? They serve as our advisors. So instead of having a big staff to make recommendations, we have these independent folks in these committees who make recommendations. We make the decisions, but with their balance and their perspective, it's really, really been good for Anderson Township.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not paying a big, as you said, you don't have a lot of bureaucracy, and you're getting good advice, and you're listening, and the fact that
that's the key.
There's 3 of you.
If you listen
you're listening,
and do something. Yes.
Which is another whole.
We
could do another whole program on that. One.
We could. Plans are great, but if you just put them on the shelf and let them gather dust, why bother?
And a lot of cities
why bother
do
to
that.
create them? And they do it all the time.
We've managed to take and use up all of our time today.
Well, I haven't taken a deep breath yet.
I know. But I think it's been a very interesting, a good lesson for all of us. Yeah, congratulations.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm happy you're back.
And I am having a good time with the new trustees. They're just good people. So
should be a good year.
I'm expecting it to be several good years.
I would hope so, for sure.
There you go.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure being with you and seeing you, and we look forward to an exciting year ahead for Anderson Township, and be anxious to see how the new trustees come together, and be anxious to hear from them now in the future to see how they.
Don't listen to them tell you what kind of a person I am.
Well, I won't let them.
Don't let them influence.
I won't let them color that at all. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to see you. We'll see you soon again. And thank you for joining us for this edition of Trustee Talk. We hope you've enjoyed it, and making us part of your day is very important to us. We hope the rest of your day is a pleasant and productive one. Our thanks on behalf of our staff, Nikki Bishop, our producer, our director, Andy Crozier. I'm Dick Murgatroyd, and we hope that you will join us again for our next Trustee Talk here on AC TV. We'll see you then.